Hello, my name is Eli Weichert, and today I will be discussing about the Dead Sea. This is for my environmental science course, which is at METC in Madison. So let's just get started and dive into more about the Dead Sea crisis that's going on. So a little bit the introduction. Dead Sea is located in the Middle East between Israel and Jordan. It's sandwiched, it's landlocked. It's played historical. It's been a historical site throughout human history, dating all the way back to the times of Jesus and all that, all the way through the Crusades and modern history. There's just been tons and tons of history there. And then on top of that, the sea is currently dying and shrinking due to large amounts of damage caused by mostly humans, either through the mining of the minerals, the forced evaporation of water, as well as the damming of rivers. On average, the Dead Sea has been losing 3 feet of depth per year, which is an astounding rate that is not sustainable, and it could very well in 50 years cause the destruction of the lake completely. So let's go to the background. Um, the Dead Sea has been played a major role throughout history for its vast salt deposits. It's been dated before the Romans, but the Romans were major players. A lot of their wealth came through salt. Salt back in the day was used as a currency because salt allowed for the preservation of food, and food is life. So it makes a lot of sense of why it became a very important area. Uh, the area has pretty much been contested over forever. Even in modern day, Israel, which is well known as the only Jewish state, surrounded by Islamic states that they have difference in ideology, and there's always been a point of tension over this. So the area has always been really in a tense area where a war could break out at any given moment, pretty much. The sea is surrounded by mountains and caves, where most notably the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. This is some of the earliest dated Holy Scripture for Christians and Muslims, as well as Judaism. So there's a huge plethora of history that has happened and is stored in this area, and to this day, it plays a very key role in tourism and agriculture. The use of the salts and minerals create fertilizer, as well as the water irrigates plants. The damming of the Jordan River has been largely one of the major issues. It used to have a flow of 340 billion gallons or something like that. Now it's down to just a trickle of that. Around 40 billion is estimated. Um, Dead Sea also needs about 160 billion gallons of water a year to sustain the levels that it's currently at, even though they're pretty lowered, and it only gets roughly 10% of that. So the crisis here is pretty large and pretty apparent. The issues now. So these are some of the main takeaways from the issues that are surrounding the Dead Sea, which is technically a lake. So if I call it a lake, then Dead Sea because it's inland water, it's a lake. But so issues. Thousands of sinkholes have formed throughout the region, and they've been growing at an exponential growth rate, and they're becoming larger and more sporadic. These sinkholes have destroyed roads, buildings, and cost people their lives. They do massive amounts of devastation, and they're pretty much untrackable. But when they happen, they happen. Um, these sinkholes are being caused because the pumping of the fresh water of the water on top of the surface is allowing the fresh water below to erode these salt deposits, and these salt deposits then fall apart and they lose stability, and then the ground collapses under the weight above it, creating these large holes. Um, the next major issue are these man-made basins, which have been going on since probably forever, but to the scale they are now, it's been really made clear that in the 1970s, the issue started arising. Companies will pump out the water of an area, dam it off, allow water to evaporate, and collect all the minerals and sediment, and pump all the remaining water and sediments back into the northern uh, basin of the Dead Sea. So it's really just pumping water into these shallow little basins, letting the water dry up, mostly pumping it to remain, mining what they want and pumping the rest back. Uh, Mining is very important for the GDP of both countries. It allows tons of fertilizer to be made and shipped throughout the region and world, which is supporting their agriculture as well. The pumping and mining is estimated up to 84 billion gallons of water lost a year, or 40% of Israel's water consumption in total. So it's massive amounts of water that these companies are using, and it's clearly causing a great effect upon the Dead Sea. The next issue we're going to go into is the damming of the rivers. So the Jordan is the main tributary for the Dead Sea, Jordan River. It also has some tributaries. And all these damming started in Israel in the 1950s and then continued through the 1970s through um, Israel, Syria, and Jordan. A lot of this funding came from the West to help them set themselves up and be able to grow their populations and have sustainable farming. But the consequences are now becoming apparent. In the 90s, there was a groundbreaking deal between Israel and Jordan for a peace deal, especially around the lake or the Dead Sea. And a lot of other Arabic countries did not appreciate that. And it's a contested fact if Syria built some dams um, blocking off the flow of water to some of the tributaries to punish Jordan because of this. And the trickle down effect is less and less water now is making it to the Dead Sea because of this. Um, there's grounds of military conflict over water in the near future. Water is needed for life, and people will go to desperate measures to get their water. So it is possible that a conflict could break out in regards to damming of rivers and restriction of water sources from one country to another. Um, Another general issue that's just affecting the world in general is the ever-growing demand of fresh water. It's clear that there's not enough fresh water to support life in the desert naturally, and the methods that humans are using are not sustainable. And it should really be looked into if the desert is a good place to live, or if we should just give up on the deserts because we're destroying the habitat to live in that habitat, if that makes sense. It's estimated that Israel and Jordan's water usage will outpace the natural recharge of their water within 10 years. So they've been running a deficit, and eventually, if they outpace their recharge, they will just start tearing into their water storages and deplete their water. So solutions. So there's been a number of solutions that have been coming into play. The first one was Israel has purchased 5, and they're planning to build at least 5 to 6 more within the next 10 years or so of these desalination plants that pump water in from the Mediterranean Sea. They purify it, what have you, take out the salt, and then convert it into fresh water for drinking that's potable. You can drink it, you can use it for your toilet or anything like that. So that is one major step that Israel's making. Their plan is reducing the burden of land-based water by a lot, but their planning really has no plan on how to restart or repair the Dead Sea and to make sure that it gets the necessary waters it needs to continue being a sea. Um, the second major plan is the Red Sea Plan. This is from the Jordanian side. It has international backing. So the idea would be building a series of pipelines to pump water from the Red Sea, which is at the south of Jordan, up into Jordan, desalinate portions of the water, and pump other portions of the water back into the Dead Sea. Uh, there's a lot of issues going on with this plan, though. The first simple one is politics. It takes multinational support. The United States is involved, Israel's involved, Jordan's involved, other local neighbors are involved, and the most recent thing that set this plan off the tables was Trump simply, the United States government simply just moved and recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and the capital of Israel, and that's put all the talks back down to the first peg again, restart the whole process. The second major issue is this could simply destroy the Dead Sea because no one really knows the effect of pumping a different solution into this water and how that will react. It could destroy the lake. It could make it turn into a more lively. It could lower the salinity of it and cause more algae blooms and stuff like that to occur, or it's just unknown how the new water introduced would balance the current system. The cost is about $1.5 billion, which would be paid portionally by the United States, Israel, and Jordan, as well as the UN kicking in. So the cost is high, but it's really not that high for the grand scheme of the project. Um, this project's been in the work for over 2 decades, and it's still just sitting on the table, and no work has really been done. Um, like the last major issue really coming into is regulation of the Dead Sea mining. Uh, Currently, the Israeli companies at least have never had to have permits or license, and it wasn't found until I believe it was 2018. Uh, a research foundation found this out, and they started suing the company, and now they have won some of those battles, and it's being looked into more government oversight into the pumping of the Dead Sea waters into basins for mining. There's the Israeli company Israeli Chemicals LDT uses an estimated 2/3 of all the water that's being used on the Dead Sea a year, and they were never paying a dime for any of the water they pumped back and forth, nor were they ever really regulated on how much or when they could pump. So they just had free will, which when unchecked and without going check, it has greatly affected the area. Um, the goals of these people is ultimately no more mining, but they're realistic and they just really prefer to have more limited mining that has a smaller scope, essentially, and the companies that are mining have to help restore the Dead Sea. In conclusion, the Dead Sea is an international treasure of history and ecological sites. It's a rarity. It has 33% salinity, which is incredibly high levels for an inland lake. It has healing properties and all this. The other takeaways, the Dead Sea is going to be forever changed no matter what. There's no way we can get it back to its levels before the 1950s, and at most we can hope to keep it at the levels it is today. Um, there's still time to save the sea. There's not much time, but there is still some time to be able to hopefully reverse some of the actions that have already taken place. The continuous human growth in the area and the world in general, um, the more growth in the desert, the more strain on resources that are there are already going to be pulled upon harder. And so it needs to be looked at if human growth in the area should continue. And the area is fragile right now. It's unsafe. There's sinkholes that could swallow a whole family or a whole building. So it really needs to be taken care of now. The good news is there are plans to save it. If the plans will go far enough, we don't know yet, but hopefully the plans in action will be enacted and problems can be solved. Thank you.